Right now you're wearing something. You probably didn't spend more than a few seconds deciding on it this morning. Maybe you grabbed whatever was nearest. Maybe you checked the forecast. Either way, you put something on before you left the house because that's just what humans do. We cover our bodies. Every culture on the planet, in every climate, across every stretch of recorded history, wears something. You'd assume early humans started covering themselves for the obvious reasons. Modesty, protection, staying warm. Except none of those are actually why it started. And once you learn what really pushed early humans to start covering their bodies, it changes how you think about fashion, culture, communication, and what it means to be a creature that can look in a mirror and feel the weight of being watched. Let's walk through the timeline. Anatomically, modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. But when you look at the physical evidence, things like bone needles and hide-scraping tools don't show up until around 120,000 years ago. And even that's a generous estimate. Most textile historians place widespread clothing adoption closer to 75,000 years ago, which means for roughly the first half of our existence, we were mostly bare-skinned under the same African sun, dealing with thorns, insects, and cold nights with nothing but our own bodies. That alone rules out the most obvious explanation: warmth. Yes, humans eventually pushed into colder regions where clothing became necessary, but clothing shows up before that migration, while we were still in the tropics. So warmth becomes relevant later, not first. The next go-to explanation is protection. Thorns, rocks, insect bites. And sure, that's part of the picture. But here's the problem. If protection were the primary driver, clothing would have started on the parts of the body that take the most physical damage: feet and hands. Instead, the earliest coverings in nearly every culture went over the torso and groin first, the areas least exposed to harm. That's not a purely practical pattern. It points somewhere else. Then there's the lice theory, and this one is genuinely fascinating. Back in 2003, a team of geneticists examined something unexpected: lice. Specifically, the split between head lice and body lice. Head lice live in hair. Body lice live in fabric. They physically cannot survive without it. So researchers traced when these two types genetically diverged from one another, which gives a clue about when humans started wearing clothing consistently enough for an entirely new subspecies to depend on it for survival. The answer: roughly 170,000 years ago. That's the oldest hard biological timestamp we have for clothing. Not a bone needle, not a scraper, but a parasite. It tells us clothing was already an established habit by that point, established enough that something evolved specifically to live inside it. But that date still doesn't answer why. It only confirms the behavior already existed. The true origin reaches further back than we can currently measure. The real answer lives somewhere deeper than fabric, tools, or bugs. Here's what researchers have started arguing instead. Clothing wasn't a practical invention. It was a symbolic one. In 2009, archaeologist Ian Gilligan published a detailed study connecting clothing to cognition. His argument: choosing to cover your body isn't just a practical act. It reflects a deeper kind of thinking that separates humans from every other animal. To wear clothing, you have to imagine a future version of yourself. You look at an animal hide, picture yourself wearing it later, figure out how to turn it into something usable, and then actually build it. That sounds simple, but it isn't. It requires memory, forward planning, and the ability to think about a moment that hasn't happened yet. The same mental machinery we use to keep promises, plan our week, or worry about things that haven't occurred. No other animal does this. A chimpanzee doesn't look at a leaf and consider how it might be useful tomorrow. We did, and the moment we began covering our bodies, we weren't just protecting skin. We were proving for the first time that we could think ahead. Clothing is one of the earliest physical fingerprints of the modern human mind, but there's something even deeper underneath that. Something most evolutionary biologists skip over when this topic comes up: shame. Not in the religious sense, shame in the neurological sense. The awareness of being perceived, the sense that your body is being watched and judged by others. This is a distinctly human trait. It requires what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to step outside yourself and imagine how you appear through someone else's eyes. Dogs don't have this. Crows don't have this. Even our closest relatives, chimpanzees, show only faint traces of it. But somewhere along the way, humans developed something further: the ability to see ourselves the way others see us. And once that clicked, everything changed. It stopped being purely about survival. It became about how you looked, how you were read by others, what you were signaling. From that point forward, clothing wasn't just about covering skin. It became a tool for shaping identity, a way to control your own image. The first person who wrapped an animal hide around their body wasn't only trying to stay warm. In a real sense, they were choosing how they wanted to be seen. And once that idea took root, it never left. You see it across cultures worldwide, even in places where clothing wasn't needed for warmth at all, like parts of the Amazon or the Pacific Islands. People still decorated themselves. Beads, paint, feathers, woven fibers, tattoos. Something was always present because the body was never just a body. Researchers studying clothing across cultures have found a consistent pattern. The drive to dress seems to intensify as human social groups grow more complex. As tribes expanded, as hierarchies formed, as strangers began interacting with strangers, clothing turned into a social technology, a form of instant communication. Before anyone spoke a word to you, what you wore told them who you were, which group you belonged to, whether you were a threat or an ally, whether you ranked above them or below. Clothing is a language, one of the oldest we have. And here's the part that should should make you pause because it applies to you right now. You get dressed every morning without giving it much thought, but your brain is running something ancient and deeply social every single time. You're not just choosing fabric, you're constructing a version of yourself to project into the world. You're negotiating between who you are, who you want to be perceived as, and what the moment calls for. That flash of anxiety when you show up overdressed, underdressed, or realize you're wearing the wrong thing entirely. That's 170,000 years of social cognition firing. That's your brain running the exact same calculation your ancestors ran around a fire. We solved the basics: cold, injury protection, but we didn't stop there. Our clothing kept becoming more detailed, more deliberate, because it was never really about the body. It was about the mind, the part of us that knows it's being watched. Clothing didn't just cover us, it built a version of us. We didn't start wearing clothes because we were cold. We started because we became aware that others could see us. And that awareness never faded. Tomorrow you'll get dressed like you always do, but underneath that routine, something ancient is still running. You're not just picking out clothes, you're deciding how to be seen, the same instinct humans have carried for thousands of years.